Here's a question for the comments. If you were running WWE's women's division, would you prioritize pushing talent that's been loyal to the company, or would you focus on bringing in proven stars from other promotions? I genuinely want to know what you think because there's merit to both approaches. Now let's talk about Chelsea's specific comments about Jordan and why they're so controversial. Chelsea allegedly said that Jordan's success in Impact doesn't mean much because Impact has had 4 viewers for the last decade, and that being a big fish in a tiny pond doesn't prepare you for WWE's ocean. That's absolutely savage, and if she really said that, it's incredibly disrespectful not just to Jordan but to everyone who's worked in Impact Wrestling. Impact has been unfairly maligned for years despite consistently producing excellent wrestling and developing incredible talent. Yes, their viewership numbers aren't comparable to WWE, but neither is their budget, their distribution, or their corporate backing. They're working with a fraction of the resources and still creating stars. Dismissing Impact's success as meaningless is short-sighted and ignorant of wrestling history. But I also understand the emotional place Chelsea's coming from when she says these things. She's not being rational, she's being reactive. She's watching her career stagnate while others get opportunities, and she's lashing out. It's not pretty, it's not fair, but it's human. We've all said things in frustration that we probably didn't fully mean, and Chelsea's doing it on camera in front of millions of people. The really interesting part is how WWE's handling this. They didn't completely bury the segment, which means they see value in it. But they also edited out the most inflammatory parts, which means they're trying to control the narrative. That's WWE in a nutshell. They want the heat that comes from real tension. The women's division in WWE has more depth that it creates actual problems, which is both amazing and frustrating. Amazing because there are so many talented women who could be featured. Frustrating because television time is limited, so most of them don't get meaningful screen time. Chelsea's been in WWE long enough to see women come and go, to see who gets pushed and who gets forgotten, and she's clearly decided she's tired of being in the forgotten category. Her defiant attitude backstage isn't just about Jordynne Grace specifically. Jordynne's just the catalyst, the most recent example of what Chelsea perceives as WWE prioritizing new and shiny over loyal and proven. Chelsea's frustration is about years of being underutilized, and it's all coming out in this moment directed at someone who hasn't done anything wrong except be talented and available. That's what makes this situation so messy and so interesting. There's no clear villain. Chelsea's not wrong for wanting better opportunities. Jordynne's not wrong for being interested in WWE. WWE's not necessarily wrong for pursuing outside talent. But someone's going to get hurt in this situation, either career-wise or personally, and that's the tragedy underneath the drama. Here's another question. Do you think Chelsea Green would be more successful if she was in AEW or Impact instead of WWE? Or is WWE the right place for her despite the frustrations? Let me know because I think she'd be a main eventer in other companies, but that doesn't necessarily mean WWE's wrong for how they use her. The Jordynne Grace angle of this story is particularly interesting because she represents everything modern about professional wrestling. She's built her brand across multiple Modern platforms. wrestling exists in
She's
this
a
weird
social
space
media
where
presence.
work and shoot
She's
blend
worked
together
internationally.
constantly. And
Real
she's become a
feelings
star
get
without
turned into
WWE's
storylines.
help. That
Scripted
independence
storylines
is
are
threatening to
delivered with real
WWE's
conviction.
traditional model,
Trying to
but
parse
it's
what's
also
real
exactly
and
what
what
makes
makes
her valuable.
is pointless
If Jordynne
because it's all
does sign
real
with
in the
WWE,
sense that
these are
WWE.
real people with
She's
real
walking in.
emotions. And it's all fake in the sense that it's being used to create entertainment. What matters is whether it's compelling, whether it makes you want to watch what happens next, whether it creates emotional investment. And this Chelsea Green situation absolutely does all of those things. I'm sitting here breaking it down because I genuinely want to see where it goes, and I'm betting you do too. Final question for the comments. Should Chelsea Green be punished or rewarded by WWE for this defiant attitude backstage? Because I think they should turn her loose and let her be the chaos agent she's clearly capable of being. Here's my prediction for how this plays out, and feel free to tell me I'm completely wrong. WWE signs Jordynne Grace within the next few months. Her debut is built up as a big deal, potentially at a premium live event. Chelsea Green is one of the first people to confront her, referencing everything she said backstage. They have a match that's way better than most people expect because both women are excellent workers. Chelsea loses but looks strong, establishing Jordan as a top talent while also giving Chelsea credibility by being her first major feud. Then, because this is WWE, they probably forget about Chelsea again and move on to other storylines, leaving her exactly where she was before this happened. That's the cynical but realistic view of how WWE operates. They'll use Chelsea to help establish Chelsea Green proved something, then move on without reciprocating the favor. She proved she's got real fire. Maybe I'm wrong. Real passion. Maybe this is Chelsea's moment. Real frustration. Maybe her defiant attitude resonates with someone important backstage. She proved she's not content being an afterthought. And they finally give her the sustained push. She proved she's willing to make waves and create controversy to get attention. Those are all qualities that main event stars need, and Chelsea just displayed them in the rawest way possible. Jordynne Grace is walking into a situation where she's already got enemies before she even signs a contract. That's actually perfect for someone in her position. She doesn't want a honeymoon period where everyone's nice to her. She wants conflict, competition, and the chance to prove herself against people who doubt her. Chelsea just provided all of that, whether she meant to or not. This isn't just about two women and their careers. This is about WWE's philosophy regarding talent development, loyalty, and who deserves opportunities. It's about how companies treat long-term employees versus exciting new acquisitions. It's about respecting what someone's done in other promotions versus only valuing WWE accomplishments. These are significant questions that extend beyond wrestling into every industry. Chelsea Green's defiant moment backstage at SmackDown was messy, emotional, controversial, and absolutely riveting. It was the kind of real feeling that breaks through scripted entertainment and reminds you that these are actual human beings with careers and dreams and frustrations. Whether WWE does right by both Chelsea and Jordynne remains to be seen, but the foundation for something special has been laid. Share this video if you think Chelsea every unwritten rule of what a general manager should and for potential Jordynne Grace and his backstage warning to Cody Rhodes about comment with your predictions for how this brilliant long-term storytelling because one thing's done in years or the beginning of an authority figure abusing power in ways that'll make the authority era look tame by comparison. And that's exactly what everyone involved wanted. What nobody's discussing is that Aldis didn't just warn Cody about Drew's intentions. He revealed information that a GM should never share, crossing lines that suggest he's got his own agenda that has nothing to do with running SmackDown fairly. And I'm about to break down exactly why this seemingly helpful warning is actually the most dangerous thing that could happen to Cody's championship reign, because sometimes your greatest threat doesn't come from your enemies, it comes from people pretending to be on your side. Let me set this scene properly because the context is everything. Cody Rhodes was in his locker room, preparing for his scheduled championship defense later in the show. He's been on an absolute tear as champion, defending against everyone, working through injuries, carrying SmackDown on his back. He's the face of WWE right now, the guy who finished his story, the champion everyone wanted to see succeed. He's also exhausted, beat up, and clearly running on fumes trying to be the champion WWE needs. Nick Aldis, SmackDown's general manager, knocked on the door and let himself in without waiting for permission. First red flag right there. A GM who respects boundaries waits to be invited. Aldis walked in like he owned the place, which technically he does as GM, but the energy was wrong. He wasn't coming in as an authority figure checking on his champion. Cody. He was coming in as someone with information he shouldn't have and an agenda for sharing. Drew McIntyre isn't just challenging you because he wants the title enough. He's got something personal against Cody you that goes back further than GM checking on his top star, and he's planning something at your title defense that even I can't control. Stop. Full stop. What the hell was that? A general manager just told the champion that there's a plan he can't control? That's either Aldis admitting he's an ineffective GM who can't manage his own show, or it's Aldis warning Cody about something Aldis himself is involved in. Neither option is good for Cody, and both options raise massive questions about what's really happening here. Drop in the comments immediately. Do you trust Nick Aldis as SmackDown GM? Or do you think he's playing a much longer game that nobody sees coming yet? Because I'm telling you right now, something's off about this whole situation. Cody's reaction was fascinating. He didn't thank Aldis. He didn't ask for more details. He just stared at Aldis with this look that said, "Why are you telling me this? And what do you want in return?" Because Cody's smart enough to know that information like this doesn't come for free. When an authority figure shares intel that could change the outcome of matches or championship reigns, there's always a price. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, But eventually Aldis is going to come collecting on whatever favor he thinks Cody owes him for this warning. Aldis continued, saying that Drew's been having private conversations with certain people in management about Cody's championship reign and whether it's best for business long-term. Again, what the actual hell? The GM is telling a champion that management is questioning his reign. Stipulations on their psychological warfare disguised as helpfulness. He could have made sure security planting seeds of doubt during the champion's mind about whether his bosses believe in him. He came to Cody's locker room and essentially wanted to help Cody. Hey, you're in danger. People are conspiring against you. Good luck with that. That's not help. That's destabilization. That's making the champion paranoid and looking over his shoulder when he should be focused on the opponent in front of him. And I'd bet everything I own that this is exactly what Aldis wanted to accomplish. Here's a question for you. Has Nick Aldis been a good general manager for SmackDown? Or has he been making questionable decisions that favor certain wrestlers over others? Think about his track record before you answer, because I've got receipts. Let's talk about Drew McIntyre's side of this, because he's the weapon being aimed at Cody, and Drew doesn't even know he's being used. Drew's motivation for wanting the championship is crystal clear. He believes he's the best wrestler on SmackDown. He thinks Cody's been given opportunities that Drew earned, and he wants to prove that he's the top guy. That's straightforward, that's honest, that's the kind of rivalry that makes sense. But Aldis is now adding layers to it that don't need to be there. By telling Cody that Drew has something personal that goes back further than Cody realizes, Aldis is creating a narrative that might not even exist. Maybe Drew does have deep-seated issues with Cody, or maybe Aldis is inventing drama to make the situation more volatile. We don't know, and that's the problem. Drew's one of the most dangerous wrestlers in WWE. By giving Cody this warning, Aldis has actually put Cody physically in more imposing, danger, technically skilled. Whether that has that intensity or not that makes you believe $1 million legitimately hurt someone what happens over the next few months. If Cody goes into their match thinking Drew has historical personal vendetta beyond wanting the championship, WWE has a Cody's going to approach complicated history with authority figures who start as neutral arbiters and slowly reveal themselves to be working for their own interests. Mr. McMahon started as a commentator and became the evil boss. Triple H and Stephanie created the authority that ran roughshod over the roster. Even friendly authority figures like Mick Foley eventually got involved in ways that compromised their neutrality. Nick Aldis seems like he's positioned as the good authority figure, the reasonable GM who just wants SmackDown to succeed. But this warning to Cody suggests something darker brewing beneath the surface. Good authority figures don't play mind games with their champions. They don't share backstage political maneuvering. They maintain professional distance and let the wrestlers settle their issues in the ring. Comment below. Which past WWE authority figure does Nick Aldis remind you of most? And is that a good thing or a bad thing for SmackDown? I'm genuinely curious about people's comparisons here. Let's examine what Aldis said about certain people in management questioning Cody's reign, because this is where it gets really insidious. If this is true, if WWE management actually has doubts about Cody as champion, that's a massive story that affects everything. It means every defense Cody makes is about proving doubters wrong. That means Aldis is just actively working to undermine the champion's confidence. It means there's pressure from above that which raises the screwy finishes or sudden title changes. What does Aldis gain from a paranoid, but if it's not true, unstable champion? If Aldis made it up, unless his goal isn't conversations to manipulate but rather positioning himself as the real power on the show, with even the champion dependent on him for information and protection. There's a third possibility that's even more interesting. Aldis is telling the truth about management's doubts, but he's the one who planted those doubts in the first place. Maybe Aldis has been having conversations with higher-ups, suggesting that Cody's great, but maybe Drew would be a more dominant champion. Maybe a change would freshen things up. Maybe Cody's running himself into the ground and a loss would actually benefit everyone long-term. If Aldis is both the source of the problem and the person warning Cody about it, that's next-level manipulation. The Drew McIntyre situation gets more complicated when you consider his history with authority figures. Drew's been screwed over by management before. He's been fired, brought back, underutilized, and had to fight for everything he's achieved. If Drew finds out that Aldis could very easily turn into a situation where both Cody and part of Drew realize they're being manipulated by Aldis, Drew's going to explode, and they turn their focus to taking down the GM. And an angry Drew McIntyre is one of the most dangerous, interesting direction this could go. Two rivals who realize they're both victims of the same game and decide to team up temporarily to expose it. But that requires both men figuring out what's happening before it's too late. Quick question. If Cody and Drew team up against Nick Aldis, who should be the third person involved in taking down a corrupt GM? Drop your fantasy booking in the comments. Let's talk about what this means for SmackDown as a show. Having an authority figure with a hidden agenda can be compelling television when done right, but it can also be exhausting when done wrong. Fans have sat through years of authority figure storylines that dragged on forever, where every match had some kind of interference or political angle, where wrestlers spent more time cutting promos about management than actually wrestling. If Aldis is going heel or revealing a corrupt side, WWE needs to be careful about how they execute it. The angle can't overshadow the wrestlers. It can't become about Aldis's power trips rather than championship rivalries. The warning Aldis gave Cody also creates a authority figures work best situation. Facilitators Cody's now going into his match not the main character, wondering what the and WWE's forgotten is that Drew has planned repeatedly over the years. He'll be looking for interference that might not come. He'll be distracted by possibilities instead of focused on the reality of the threat Drew poses naturally. And that distraction could cost him the championship, which might be exactly what Aldis wants. If Cody loses the title because he was worrying about Aldis's warning instead of preparing properly for Drew, who's really to blame? Is it Drew for beating him? Is it Cody for letting mind games affect his performance? Or is it Aldis for playing those mind games in the first place? WWE loves these kinds of morally gray situations where everyone's a little bit right and a little bit wrong. Here's another angle nobody's discussing. What if Aldis warned Cody specifically because he wants Cody to be paranoid and make mistakes, but he warned him with enough truth that if questioned, Aldis can claim he was just being helpful? It's the perfect cover. I tried to warn you about Drew. Not my fault you couldn't handle the information, becomes Aldis's defense when Cody accuses him of sabotage. That's brilliant villainy if that's what's happening. That's the kind of calculated manipulation that creates truly memorable antagonists. Aldis would be playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, operating on a level where even his helpful actions are actually harmful, and he's got plausible deniability the entire time. Comment your prediction. Does Cody Rhodes keep the championship after this warning? Or does Aldis's interference, direct or indirect, cost him the title? I've got my predictions, but I want to hear yours first. But who else? The broader question this raises is about information. Is he telling Drew things about Cody? General managers have access to information that wrestlers don't. How many current SmackDown storylines are actually being shaped by management opinions, behind-the-scenes information sharing rather than organic wrestler conflicts? If this is setting up a revelation that Aldis has been pulling strings all along, that every major angle on SmackDown this year has been part of his master plan, that's genuinely exciting storytelling. But it requires WWE to commit to the bit, to follow through on the setup, and to eventually give us the payoff of Aldis being exposed and dealt with. The worst-case scenario is that this warning means nothing, that it's just a throwaway segment designed to add drama to one match, and then we never hear about it again. WWE's famous for setting up intriguing storylines and then abandoning them when something shinier comes along. We've seen it 1,000 times, and we'll probably see it 1,000 more. But I'm choosing to be optimistic. I'm choosing to believe that this Nick Aldis warning is the first move in a longer game that's going to play out over months and fundamentally change how we view SmackDown's power structure. Because if WWE's actually planning something this intricate, it could be special. Drew McIntyre deserves better than being a pawn in someone else's game. He's too talented, too compelling, too legitimate as a main event threat to be reduced to a tool that Aldis uses to manipulate Cody. Whatever happens with this situation, Drew needs to come out looking strong, whether he wins the title or not. His credibility as a top guy can't be sacrificed for an authority figure. The champion angle should be the strongest character on the show. Cody deserves better than not being someone who can be easily manipulated by authority who may or may not have his best interests at heart. Should WWE championship reign has been about overcoming obstacles or keep him as a fighting authority figure trying to manage a chaotic show? Let me know, because both options have potential, but they lead to very different stories. Here's my ultimate take on this situation. Nick Aldis warning Cody Rhodes about Drew McIntyre is a powder keg waiting to explode. Whether it explodes into a brilliant multi-layered storyline or just fizzles out into nothing depends entirely on WWE's commitment to following through on what they've started. The pieces are in place for something special. A possibly corrupt GM, a paranoid champion, an unwitting weapon in Drew McIntyre, and a locker room full of wrestlers who might get caught in the crossfire. What happens at that championship defense will tell us everything. If Drew wins clean with no shenanigans, maybe Aldis was just being genuinely helpful and we're all reading too much into it. If there's interference or controversy that feels orchestrated by Aldis, the conspiracy deepens. If Cody wins but acts paranoid and makes accusations afterward, we're heading toward a champion versus authority storyline. Any of those directions could work if executed properly. The key is that WWE can't leave this hanging. They've opened the door to questioning Aldis's motives and methods. They need to walk through that door and give us answers, even if those answers lead to more questions. That's how you keep an audience invested. Constant forward momentum with enough mystery to